Don Quick gets daily Real Madrid updates. What's this about Ceballos leaving and no one coming in? How is this possible? Our midfielders leave and no one comes to replace them. How are you, man?
How's it going? Hey there. All right, let's wait and see what happens because there's quite a bit of hustle going on. A lot of news activity going on. But yeah, at first, I have to say that I'd also be surprised if there wasn't a replacement for Ceballos. Given the midfield context we're going to explain and considering the situation. Also, experiences show us that it might be worth taking action instead of being a bit tight. Anyway, there's a lot to discuss.
Okay, because at some point Nico Paz's name will come up there. I think anyone who tries to connect Nico Paz and Ceballos isn't really crazy, because even though one is right-footed, he's more about holding the ball while the other is more vertical and all that. It's true they can play in similar areas, so it's a connection of ideas. Hey, this guy is leaving. We have him for just 8 million this summer, 9 next. But I think that's not the case. Madrid would want him next year, right?
Yeah, I think Nico Paz's situation is one of them. A situation that fits within the term project, where in fact Tottenham's name came up and Madrid would need to give the green light. And it seems, at least for now, Madrid isn't into that, according to people who supposedly have good information. I think that besides being very different players, there's a unique feeling about Nico Paz when it comes to building a project around him. Looking ahead to the 26th, start observing and making decisions, all right?
I said Nicopa's name would come up. I already mentioned it, but it works great to link it to the next part and analyze a bit. So, about the game against Oviedo, if Madrid has improved and all that. Starting with the midfield, if you agree. I mean, I think they're also waiting for Nico Paz to establish himself there. It'll be really good for him to get a lot of playtime again. It's because if he didn't come to Madrid, he'd have the same as Ceballos, right? Because they're leaving, several things are happening. Franco just arrived, plus one we had to sign. Just like Guller's day. No, if Barca didn't sign him. And this one, if Paris Saint-Germain didn't sign him. It's yet to be seen if Güler is truly one of the best midfielders in the world. That confirmation from Güler might benefit Real Madrid. Where will Camavinga go if he stops getting injured? More or less, right? If it works out, there are a series of tests for this year. Madrid doesn't want to bring in another guy, you know? Let's give him a try too, right? I think it's kind of going in that direction, right?
Well, in this case, I kind of get the perspective, right? Sure, it's in a different league of games altogether. Let's see, Madrid has some certainties in the midfield, but there are also some questions to be answered. You mentioned Camavinga, who last year he was really injured, not just injured, but really injured, and the year before he also had physical issues. He's facing a season that could be important, but relying heavily on him in midfield seems tricky. It seems more likely he'll be a backup due to his past situation. By the way, I really like him, but his physical condition is what we've been seeing. Then there's Arda Güler, a player I think both you and I really like. We love him. But it's also true that he's at a stage of positional change and figuring out his football equation. He's not in a new process, just adapting to a new place. So, to what extent can you also rely on him, right? And then he keeps adding up situations. For me, it's crucial not to go with just 5 midfielders. If Ceballos leaves, that's it. Thiago hasn't even played an official match with the first team. I think it's essential to have 6 in a system where you can play with 3 or even 4 midfielders. I don't rule out that he knows and might try at some point. I can think of Bellingham, Valverde, Hecho, Aminia, De Güler. I don't think it's crazy. All right, so people are around and I've got comments on my channel. Sure, but if you believe in a midfielder, you block Thiago Pitár's path. Well, first of all, this is Real Madrid or Thiago Pitár FC. Thanks. I mean, Real Madrid needs to ensure its competitive sustainability. And it's not an obstacle to say that Thiago Pitár can grow in a way where he doesn't have too much responsibility, where the coach gradually involves him. And here's a fact for you. Last year, I'm not saying it will happen, but there have been seasons with many injuries. Real Madrid had a total of 54 injuries last season. There's an overwhelming number of matches. Thiago will need to start getting involved. Arda Güler will need to grow. Camavinga will need to keep finding his balance. But in the meantime, I think we need to make the position more competitive. And above all, a term that some Madrid fans don't like. I think we need a player who can better organize the game. Tchouaméni is an amazing player, but he's something else. Valverde is a great player, but he's different, and lately Bellingham has been seen more as a number 10 than as a midfielder helping with organization. To me, it seems pretty obvious.
Before checking how Madrid performed in the match against Oviedo, because actually, Amini was fantastic, I think. And now we talk about how life is easier for him when the whole team works together. It's not typical for a midfielder of that profile, as the kid said yesterday after the match. He mentioned that now there's a better defensive balance, which is great for him, and it's becoming evident as his qualities are being enhanced. But a small side note, of course, if you give him that responsibility like the one we've given to Ceballos, Ceballos has had to play a ton of games due to his teammates' injuries over the past few years. Of course, for a kid who just joined the first team, he's kind of going back and forth between Castilla and the first team. Give him all that responsibility. Some might say, well, heck, let's do it since Madrid never does it. Give responsibility to the young players now, but like you said, we haven't had seasons where everyone gets injured. Where do you find someone unless I already have them or Madrid has already spotted and located the guy? A suitable replacement for Ceballos, but it shouldn't be someone who we're saying can't handle the responsibility due to lack of experience. Well, if you say, okay, if it's the same, maybe I'll bring you up as a young talent. Angelo Stiller could be an option, though he's no longer talked about. So, the profile of someone who has already played many minutes in a major league and all. But of course, with only a few days left, where do you find someone like that?
And because I always give an example that's really obvious. Madrid needs to sign, in my opinion, a player who combines potential and the right attributes. Emphasizing what I mentioned earlier about finding a player who can help, let's say, enhance the game's structure and organization. When Paris Saint-Germain signed Vitinha from Wolverhampton, he wasn't the Vitinha he is now, but he was a Vitinha who had already played in the world's top league. He had already played at Porto and was undoubtedly a player with elite experience. So, in my opinion, Real Madrid should seek this type of player. A player, and I'll mention two names. They don't have to be these players, plus they have their own nuances. However, since they're well-known globally, they're rising stars. Young with their strengths and weaknesses. Angelo Stiller and Adam Warden are two players who have been rumored to join Real Madrid. And somehow, let's say, they could help the team improve in certain areas. I understand they're not affordable players and not easy to secure. I'm talking about two names. There could be others. I'm not asserting it has to be them. What I am suggesting is that there could be people who, like me, understand that Real Madrid needs several specific elements. Currently, things aren't entirely clear in the midfield due to the number and type of players available. So you don't necessarily need to go after McAllister. Perhaps I really like him as a player because he can play at the 6 or the 8. He can play. I saw him play a few weeks ago. I saw him in Gravenberch's position. But he can play as an inside midfielder, able to occupy all three midfield levels as a 6, 8, or 10. Okay, I'm not suggesting we should spend 150 million, but rather make an investment. Well, look, Camavinga serves as a good example for me. When you sign Camavinga, you're acquiring a player who had already caught the attention of Europe's elite clubs. He was gaining attention, and you moved quickly to pay 30 million for him. Well, it's somewhat that market understanding, that touch of experience.
And hey, you already had Casemiro, Kroos, and Modric. He was signed on the last day of August 2021. Casemiro, Kroos, and Modric were about to have their last great year together, which was the 14th. So then it's not about recruiting him. And now where should he play? Well, I mean, the main players were set, but Madrid must anticipate situations, right? I believe that signing was very welcomed. That's why finding someone like that now, who's relatively affordable, if they offer you 15 or 20 for Ceballos, whether it's a loan with a purchase obligation, in theory, they provide it to you the following year, right? I understand that Madrid might need another significant sale, and soon we'll discuss Vini's, Rodrygo, everything that's unfolded recently. But to close the topic on the midfield, even with what's available, you initially viewed it positively. I see an impressive first half from Madrid.
I think Real Madrid, across all its positions, understands football in a cohesive way. I get it, Real Madrid. It hasn't achieved it. Clearly, more should be expected, even though we're at this project phase. Alonso was present, hasn't been there long, but improvements and behaviors are evident. Madrid is a more concise team within its extended coverage. Let me explain the length in terms of the goal. Because there's a large gap between Courtois and the center backs, and there's a short distance between midfield, defense, and attack. There's a team with solidity, structure, and more aggression, alongside better balance without the ball. I find Madrid more appealing without the ball than with it. It's also true that rival strategies pushed Real Madrid to move the ball quickly, and against Oviedo, they accelerated. In fact, from around the 30th minute, that's what happened. The team increased its tempo as Rodrygo joined the play with Mbappe making runs. The right side was also impressive, and I admired its intensity. Valverde, Carvajal, along with others, mount a strong performance off the ball. With their pressure and work ethic, they can achieve a lot. A lot to learn from Alonso. So there are reasons to be optimistic, to be pleased from the standpoint of demanding and aiming for more. But this is just the beginning for a Real Madrid poised to position itself better on the field. Then we'll assess based on the opponents that place greater demands. But this is a positive start.
Okay, before Vini's benching and before other benchings, you just referred to Carvajal now. More focused, not Valverde, too concentrated on the right. Valverde's not primarily in the midfield anymore, naturally, but he drifts there. And then, well, more open, and Carvajal is somewhat established as a right back. With Trent, we're about to see Trent Alexander-Arnold's benching time. Let's begin with that. It's an acknowledgement to the player. It's because he already considers Carvajal the definite starter. It's merely rotation. What's your opinion?
I think Carvajal and Arnold compete for rotation. What I mean is, on one hand, I'm shifting some pieces around because we must remember that Madrid had the shortest preseason. Some players are exhausted and others are extremely worn out. So Arnold is one of those truly exhausted as he joins a new team. Carvajal is a player whose dedication is never doubted. In fact, at one point, I felt he played too long, but evidently he must have been comfortable. Carvajal seems poised to challenge Arno. He'll provide strong competition, and that's positive. The competitiveness, in my opinion, is encouraging news. And thus, with all the emphasis, Abraham doesn't challenge him. Rodrygo, in different respects, competes with Vinicius. Rudiger alternates Militao, because Militao, as stated, can't play every game.
He clarified very well at the end, and I appreciated that. Militao is recovering and doesn't need too many minutes. He played all 90 the other day, which is just common sense.
You can't push the limits of players returning from serious injuries like Militao. The takeaway is that ultimately titles or not, this is football, plain and simple. But we have a coach focused on meritocracy, which is refreshing. It's natural not to win as much as Ancelotti does because he's Cancelo and wins a lot. We can discuss finer points based on his resume, and winning at Madrid doesn't ensure achieving his feats. Nonetheless, the message is fresh and merit-based. I like it, thanks.
And about everyone's importance, a message he repeated often in the press conference. I want everyone to feel important, not just that. Look, two messages with the same idea. Everyone matters. And when asked about Rodrygo, about Vinicius, he's just another one, just another one. I believe the only one he praised was saying he loves how he turns, which led him to this point, not Mbappe. But why Mbappe? If he's performing well, I believe he stands above the rest. Consider this. In recent days, I've been seeing differences between, and I don't want to create conflict here, not at all. I think Vinicius, in what he excels at, it's like a locksmith specialized in unique locks worldwide. No, and he's the best at it. Hey, you can place. I don't know industry pros, but if that guy is the best at it, look. Speaking of locks, it's apt as Vinicius is the best at opening them. So in what Vinicius excels at, I think for me, when he's in his prime, he's the world's best. Even surpassing Mbappe at Mbappe's forte. The thing is, Mbappe can do more things. And if you've got the guy on fire, how can you bench Mbappe if he guarantees 1, 2, or 3 goals per game, right?
That's why the competitive rotation used this term. One thing, you rotate based on competitiveness, but also through being competitive. What do I mean? If your level makes it easier for you to leave, it's easier for them to rotate with you. If you see Mbappe looking good physically, he looks sharp. He's gained those 4 kilos, but he's moving better than last year. He's performing better, and he's in a good mood, so you can't take him out right now. He's your leader when it comes to the decisive part of the area, scoring 3 goals in 2 matches. Mbappe has started off like a rocket.
And what do you think about Vinicius being benched? Yesterday, before the game started, some crazy theories started floating around like, no, Madrid is showing him the door. What do you make of it, man?
I think Vinicius hasn't been shown the exit door lately. What they have shown him is that he's not untouchable. I do think there are different doors that could become revolving in the future. This is often used in politics, by the way. But to me, he seems like a player who needs some wake-up calls. I'm not talking about what happened in Oviedo, which has a lot of context. I've explained my video. Yeah, every situation needs context to be understood. Context is key to understanding reactions. But not just Vini's, anyone really. Later on, we can explore, get into the minds of people we really like, myself included, say you shouldn't do this, that, and beyond. But everything has a context in football. Vinicius has a context. His performance is below what we've seen from him at his best. So you have to do something if we go back to before. Alonso knows it's about meritocracy. He wants to send a message of merit, not equality. About meritocracy, about equality. Not everyone is like me in soccer. No way, everyone equal, not a chance. Not everyone is equal here.
With those words from the forest. He didn't exactly say no. Everyone's the same, but yes.
No. Of course not, no way. They're not all the same here. The thing is, there are players you can demand more from. You won't demand from Vallejo like you did at the start. So in that demand, Alonso knows that it's also important to give reminders. He gave it to Arnold in his own way, another level, and he gave it to Vinicius at that rotation point. Then there's Rodrygo's reading, but Vinicius is very clear, you have to get involved. Well, actually, statistically speaking, it didn't work out. He didn't get a steal, assist, or goal.
It didn't go badly. So how did you see Rodrygo?
I saw him doing well, but not outstanding because I think physically, like in the Club World Cup, he barely played and hasn't been one of the main players in. He wasn't really involved in the first game or in preseason or anything, so I think he's not at his best physically. But I did see him for about 15 to 20 minutes in the first half, and he stood out. Some people might understand this differently, but I don't care. To me, Rodrygo connects better in tight spaces, and I've said it here 1,000 times, he links up better with Mbappe than with Vinicius. On the other hand, in open spaces, which was evident in the play where Vinicius scored the goal. It's clearer, but in tight spaces in 5-3-2 or 5-4-1 systems, which are systems that teams like Osasuna and Oviedo might use. In that aspect, Rodrygo really understands off-the-ball movement better than Vinicius, which doesn't mean, and I've said it many times, he's better than Vinicius. It's understood in this specific soccer concept. It's no surprise that Rodrygo, if he stays, will be an asset. We'll see if he's an essential asset or just an important one. I think he's going to be a valuable asset, not essential, but hey, without directly targeting those of us who like Vinicius, it puts him in a tough spot and makes him compete. Why not, indeed?
Sure, with what you're saying, I'm picturing the following. And it's something that a coach like Xabi Alonso or anyone really could easily do with the team in mind. Teams that close in on you like, well, we've seen Osasuna, Oviedo, and so on. Maybe it's better to have someone more left-leaning in that position. I'm not benching Vinicius again just for the sake of it, but I'm considering a player like Rodrygo for that role. From what you say, in tight spaces, combining with Mbappe, he's better. That's what you need to finally break through, that and shots from outside the box. Madrid also tried them against teams or even against those you're already beating. Then they create spaces because they want to tie the game. That's where Vinicius is deadly, as we saw yesterday. Or against teams that will dominate you like Barca, like City, maybe Vinicius might be a better fit. So, in that scenario, we might have a season where Rodrygo stays and they compete for a spot. You'd see Villa Alonso saying there are games where Vinicius needs to be on the bench. Like yesterday and mostly Rodrygo. They wouldn't give each other looks, and even if they didn't, the media noise would be unbearable. The media noise would be unbearable, man.
No, that's not it. Sure, in the end, it's like everything else. If we take it a bit to the extreme, that's really what makes you think, right? Naturally, what happens is that, as you mentioned earlier, the faces, the roles, and also the leaderships. In the end, Vinicius is a leading player at Real Madrid, and you can't maintain that forever. It's worth mentioning in Vinicius' favor that even though he's not super collaborative, he improved during his prime. We also talked about this on your channel back then. He improved his overall game reading. So I think the good thing about Rodrygo, if he continues, we'll see if he continues, but if he does, he'll be a bigger threat in attack. And people will be more alert because there's someone who can motivate you. I think Vinicius will start against Mallorca next time. I'm pretty sure he'll start alongside Mbappe. But for me, after last season, you really need to step up. And in the last season, it's worth noting that beyond alleged absences of Rodrygo and such, they're there, but there was a time when Rodrygo was completely off, out of range. Let's say Vinicius didn't really get benched either. So, the last time Vinicius was benched for sporting reasons was in the 21-22 season. In the matches, I think, against Alaves and Levante. Back then, he had to come off the bench and shake things up with Rodrygo, specifically because of Hazard and Bale, who played in Alaves in Vitoria. Sorry, I think right now is the time to compete, to prove ourselves. Both have had a tough average season. So Vinicius is ahead in terms of skill, yes, but Alonso knows Rodrygo still has potential. They'll need him if he stays. And also, this might mean other players need to step up their game because Xabi Alonso has shown that meritocracy matters to him.
So if Rodrygo stays, these two can't play together.
In very specific situations, yes, when the opponent, let's say you're losing or tied and need to win. Maybe you need to defend less and you're constantly in formation. All together, on their field. That's where you can mix the three sometimes. But I do think that generally we won't see too much of Rodrygo, Vinicius, or Mbappe at first.
And lastly, do you see Franco as a regular starter from now on before he recovers? Before Bellingham comes back, because when he does, things will change again. So with the midfield made up of Menegaller, Ceballos, and either Vinicius or Rodrygo up front, I think Vinicius. Plus Mbappe, the spot left is Brahim's with more Brahim, and for now, more Tuan and more Tantono. When Bellingham returns, I imagine the Englishman will be the starter. But right now, it's between the Argentine and the Spanish Moroccan.
I think the headline is going to be more about that. I haven't mentioned something that I'm going to highlight again and shouldn't overlook. There was something, that positional connection, man-to-man, that's everywhere. This guy is everywhere, but Valverde Carvajal has more presence. That triangle on the right side didn't seem to shine with the ball to me. but when it comes to controlling the field, he can contribute a lot more. One of them causes a penalty that isn't called. He doesn't play a spectacular game, but it's his first start for Real Madrid. There are people, and I respect that, who say, well, to me, so-and-so didn't impress me. I mean, he didn't blow me away in terms of having an amazing game. What impresses me are two things: his personality when asking for the ball and how often he shows up in key moments. And then there's something we hadn't noticed before, which is super important, and I include myself here, that we hadn't valued his pressing work, especially with Vinicius and Mbappe around. I'm not saying he'll be like Di Maria, okay, but he's a player who never stops working. Yeah, and he's realized that to play for Real Madrid, he'll have to work hard off the ball. And for the know-it-all, if I go back to the same point, pressing is very important. Return and control of the field. And you do that with people who push hard and go all out.
Exactly. Plus, when we lost the ball, they moved like jets. You could see that Madrid, when they lost the ball and tried to recover quickly, had energy. Yeah, and on that right side, they go even faster like jets, because they fit that profile, right? I mean, Valverde, of course. And this kid bounced back, you know. I remember when he used to come down with, well, the runs up the wing and stuff like that. I mean, he was already working hard in our own half whenever Oviedo had a chance and got into our field. But that's not all. There's a moment in the first half where he doesn't recover at the back. Remember, Valverde used to pass it. Valverde tries to find Mbappe, but he doesn't reach. A defender gets there first. But he recovered forward, he recovered backward. I always saw him getting to where the ball was. I mean, he never gave up like, I'm not going for it. We've only seen it a million times, right?
Sure, they think it's even more so. I think he's a more mature player, generationally speaking, than Brain. Mayer is 26, but I think he's a better player, more suited for what Madrid needs. Prime will be crucial as a game changer and will always be present, but more so for the attacker's traits and what Xavi is looking for. Better not too much, but hey, Bellingham will return. And when Bellingham comes back, well, someone will have to step down. And then meritocracy is highlighted there. But what I want is Miguel. 19, 20 players, I mean, I want to see if it's possible. Let's see if a midfielder comes. Now we'll have to see, but I want 19, 20 guys fighting for starting spots. Well, obviously for the whole season, not really, because that's almost impossible. 16, 17, something like that, because otherwise we can't breathe. Last year, Real Madrid was exhausted from injuries, and because of players who had to play too much, like Rodrygo.
To this, and just to wrap up. There's an issue when you have 20 players all fighting for a spot. It's easier for tensions to arise in the locker rooms. That's how it's always been in any job too, right? So the balance, that good locker room vibe, is crucial at Madrid. And keeping everyone engaged, well, that's the coach's job. That's what he needs to achieve. At some point, Ancelotti pulled it off. The thing is, well, later they started challenging him because, of course, he achieved it. Yeah, remember the 16 to 17 season.
It was crazy, and everyone had fun playing in the field. They felt useful and important to everyone. I don't think I said that. That's the extreme, what we've said about the extreme argument. But having 18, 19, 20 competitive guys fighting for the starting 11 at Madrid would be a privilege after what happened last year.
Exactly. Well, Queek, sending you a big hug. Give this video a like if you enjoyed it, comment, share. And yeah, keep hanging out here. And tomorrow we'll be on your channel, dude.
Yes, sir. A hug, another one. Bye-bye.